Hey everybody, thanks for joining for another Lawnspiration. Today we have a special topic as you prepare for your fall renovations or whatever renovation time you're doing, whether it's spring, summer, or fall. A really important step, and I would consider like step 0, is to do a soil test. And soil tests are one of those things where it's not directly going into what you're doing right now in terms of you're not planting seed, you're not aerating, you're not doing some of those things, but it's essentially giving yourself a blueprint or a map with what nutrients you need to help your soil be at its best to encourage grass growth. And so a good way to think about it is like any sort of plant or anything like that, you want to make sure that the conditions are just right. If it's too far in one area or another, it could make it not pull in the nutrients as well, or the nutrients wouldn't be there for the plant to grow as well as it could. And so that's why a soil test is really important. I actually personally do this twice a year, so I do it in the springtime and in the fall because I'm here in the Pacific Northwest United States. So I use cool season grasses. Behind you is perennial ryegrass, and unfortunately also behind you is some Poa annua, but we'll talk about that in another video. But with cool season grasses, I like to assess my soil levels in the spring and again in the autumn, just to see how that's doing before I do any overseeding or any sort of renovation work. And it's also just a good way to get a check on how your different nutrient levels are doing, whether it's the macronutrients, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, or some of the micronutrients like iron, calcium, boron, etc. Personally, I have gone with the MySoil testing kit. There's a number of different ones out there. You can also go to your local extension office to see if they do soil testing as well. But this is the one I use. It's pretty easy to order just off of a variety of online ordering platforms, and you can send it in and get the results pretty quickly within about a week or two. So anyway, we'll be doing this today, and we'll walk through the different steps on how to actually do a soil testing. So for soil testing, really you just need a few different things. Obviously you need a soil probe. This is something that you'll push into the ground, ideally 4, 5, 6 inches into the ground to get a soil plug that you will then be able to mix that together with other soil samples. And that kind of gets to the other point. You don't want to just do it in one spot and call it good. It's good to essentially get a sample from different parts of your lawn and mix all that soil together, so that way you get a good representative reading of the overall lawn that you're looking at. Because some places might have you might have overdone it and accidentally put a lot of fertilizer one spot, or there might be something else going on that would give you an inaccurate reading. You'll notice I'm also holding a to-go container. You need some sort of bucket or something to put the soil samples in, and then mix it all together to then put that into the soil sample container. So whether it's a bucket, I use this because it's about the right size. And also a pair of chopsticks. So for whatever you got the food to go in, a pair of chopsticks are great to mix up the soil. And also, like, if you need to push out the soil from the soil probe, chopsticks are a great way to go. Tool wise, for the soil probe, sometimes you'll see ones that are just the stake by itself, and those are okay. I found that that's a little bit harder to push down into the ground to get a good deep soil sample, so I got the one with the handles on it. I'll put a link in the description below so you can see which one I got, if that's helpful. Aside from that, there's just 2 other quick tips when you're doing soil samples. One is pretty important, which is that you want to wait as long as possible after your last time fertilizing to do a soil sample, ideally about a month or so. And so the reason for that is if you've fertilized recently and then immediately after do a soil sample, your results will be skewed by whatever you just fertilized with. So that's why it's a good idea to wait, so that way you get a more accurate representation. And the other thing too is it's a good idea to do it when your soil is a little bit wet, so that way your soil probe can go down into the soil and get a good amount of depth on that. Otherwise, if you don't water, if there wasn't recently rain, it might be a little bit harder to get further down into the soil. And with that, let's do it. I'm going to get the soil probe and take a few different samples, and then we'll put it all together. So now that you've gotten the samples of the soil, I took mine from probably about 5 or 6 different spots around the lawn. You're going to end up with kind of a mix of obviously like grass and root material, which is always good to look at to see how deep your roots are going and things like that, and how it's absorbing the water. But for the soil sample, you want to get rid of all this. And so do your best to get rid of as much of the organic material as you can. So like all of this like root and grass material and sticks, I'm just going to try to get rid of all of that. So I'm going to just toss that really quick, kind of just sifting through it with my fingers, also breaking up as many clumps as possible. And here's where the other chopstick comes in handy. So I use the first chopstick to help push the dirt through on the soil probe, because sometimes it gets a little stuck. Actually, always it gets a little stuck for me. So I'm just going to use this other one to kind of stir it up, kind of break up the clumps again, and to try to bring some of that organic material up toward the top so I can get rid of it. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. All right. Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be a little bit of stuff in there, which is fine, but try to get as much out as you can. Cool. And so then for the soil sample kit, usually just comes in a pretty simple box like this. Just going to open it up here. And so in the box, you'll find a few different things. And this isn't just for lawns, you know, like if you're into gardening or other things, it's great for that too. So with your soil sample kit, you'll get some instructions, obviously, and you'll get an envelope to send your soil sample back with. You have a measuring scoop so you get the right amount, and the actual soil sample container as well. And you'll see that it's clear, it's sealed with a barcode on there for your specific soil sample, and there's a liquid in there as well as some sort of a absorbing capsule, it says. So anyway, you want to make sure not to spill the liquid and leave the capsule in there. So you just give it a turn, which will break this foil seal, which is great because that way it ensures that you have a good sample container. Okay, so now I have I'm using my compost bin actually as our little table here. So I just took the soil sample measuring cup or measuring scoop, and again, one last little exercise of removing as much organic material as I can. So a few little blades of grass and some roots and twigs, which leaves me with a pretty good sample of soil. So I'll just put that in here. And one other quick thing is you can do, like if you have multiple lawns, like I have a front and back lawn or front and backyard here on my property, but I do this so it's just a sample for my front yard, and then I do another one for my back. Actually, I haven't done one for my back yet because my backyard has been just kind of the whatever lawn, because that's the lawn where like rabbits go to eat and things like that. And I just try not to stress too much about it. But my front lawn is the one that I've tried to take from this like really like poor condition, a lot of moss, pretty crappy lawn to a better state that you see it now, and still working on it. So I've just been doing this for a few years now. But anyway, it should look like this. Again, this is, I'll kind of cover up the barcode, but this is what the soil sample should look like once you've put it into the container. Make sure it's on there really tight. And that is it. And then you'll put it in the envelope, send it off to the team to go through and actually do an analysis of your soil, and you'll get the results. Usually, I'd say it's typically been in about like a week and a half. so not too bad. And I'll show you the results once we get that back and compare it to other past measurements that I've done. One other quick thing I almost forgot. One of the most important steps, obviously, is to register your kit. And so when you open up the container in the instructions, you'll have a specific registration number for your specific soil sample. So make sure you go onto the website if you're using MySoil testing. So this is mysoiltesting.com, and sign up if you've never done this before. And if you have, then just log back in and register the new kit. And that's critically important, because then when you get the results, that's how you'll see them. Okay, so now that you've gotten the results back after you sent that off, it's a good idea to obviously take a look at them. And one thing that you can also do if you've gotten a number of results over a period of time, like for example, I do this every 6 months or so, is to start to document those. And unfortunately with MySoil testing, at least as of right now, or at least I haven't seen, you're not able to see them all kind of together in one spot. And so what I've done is I've just taken the results and put them into a Google Sheet, and I've put in some conditional formatting to where if it's below the ideal range, it's blue. If it's within range, it's green. And then if it's above range, then it's red. And so it's a really good, quick and easy way that I can see what sort of changes I've been making have made a good difference. And for example, you also start to see different trends. So my soil where I am here tends to be a little bit more on the acidic side. So I've been doing things to try to make it more basic, or to raise the pH into an ideal range. Other things, I'm starting to see like a trend where my nitrogen is a little bit low. I think I did take my soil test right after fertilizing back in 2021, which is why it's kind of off. But I do notice it's a little bit low, and so I've been adding quite a bit more nitrogen this fall as I get ready for that fall blitz, again, because I'm in a cool season area. And then other things too, for example, I generally see that my phosphorus is pretty high, so I know that I don't need to add that, or I need to be a little bit cautious about adding too much phosphorus. And I'm not super above the range, but I'm a bit above the range, so it's just something that I need to be thoughtful about. And similarly, I'm a little bit low on potassium too, actually quite a bit low on potassium. So the fertilizers I've been adding have had potassium in them to encourage overall plant health. And then on the micronutrient side, so these are considered macronutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Micronutrients are these guys. And over the last few years, I've been doing things to try to improve these, and I have seen some good improvements. One exception is magnesium, which I've generally been pretty low. And you can see a pretty good bump this year, and there was a lot of intentionality here. So in March, I noticed that my magnesium was low, so I researched it and have been adding Epsom salt, which I've dissolved into my liquid fertilizers, to try to bring that up. And I'll talk about each of these macro and micronutrients in more detail in subsequent videos. But that's a quick look at why soil testing is so important, because you really get a good view of what's working and what's not working in terms of your fertilizer plans and what your grass needs to really be healthy and to take up and be most efficient with the fertilizers that you put down. So it's one of those unsung heroes, I think, in the lawn care world, is doing a good soil analysis on a regular basis to get a good look at how things are progressing. So I hope you found this helpful. If you have, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. And we'll see you again on the next one.